I was a little girl, like 7 years old, 8, 9, however old, little boys might be playing cops and robbers. At least my brother and my cousins did, or playing basketball or whatever they played. I played school. I was the teacher. And so my friends might be sitting in a semicircle in my bedroom and I was writing on the board teaching them. And if my friends weren't over, I would get my stuffed animals and I would line them up and I would teach them. So even though the conversation I had with my friend kind of helped me go in that direction, literally I've been teaching since I was a young kid. So when you look back at that, it's like, okay, it's
Join me, Jeremy Swick, on Into the Unknown, a podcast that delves into the personal journeys, stories, and experiences of individuals across diverse professions. As a historian by trade, I firmly believe that our personal histories shape our present and offer valuable insights into our paths ahead. With that being said, let's get into it. On this episode of Into the Unknown, I am joined with Amy Pechacek.
there you go.
There
Good job. You got it.
we got it. How are you doing today, Amy?
I'm good. How are you, Jeremy?
I can't complain. I'm thankful for you taking the time to talk with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It means a lot to be here. So appreciate you taking the time to visit with me and, like we were saying, rescheduling for today.
Amy, I think so much of that is just being flexible. I think sometimes we get wrapped up in our own things and uh, we don't realize how many things are going on in the world. So I always do my best to be flexible. And I think that just kind of how human nature should be a little bit more. And instead of those tight, rigid things, things happen.
Yeah, we have to roll with the punches. You're right. Life happens, and I think it's good that you have that trait. It's a good trait to have, and I believe people are starting to realize just how important it is to be adaptable.
I truly agree. I think if 2020 taught us anything, it's kind of you have to roll with it. You have to keep on going no matter what's going on. And of course, what our issue was, it wasn't anything we did. It was the weather.
Yep, this crazy Texas storms. Think you and I, right before we were supposed to record last time, we had tornado warnings going off, and I was like, okay, I can't do this right now. I
I
can be on a Zoom meeting during a tornado warning like I was yesterday, but I don't know that I can do a podcast recording during, with my bicycle helmet on in the safe spot in my house.
absolutely. So I love talking about the importance of networking. How are we connected?
I believe I was on another podcast, and the podcast host referred me to you.
Yes, I believe so. And they do such a great job. I believe it was probably Olivia, if I'm not mistaken. She
Yes,
always
Olivia, absolutely.
she
I
always
can.
does an amazing job at connecting people.
Yeah, she's great.
So I want to know a little bit more about you, that comic book issue number one, that origin story. Who are you?
Well, like you said, I'm Amy Pechacek. Um, I am a public speaker. I have a corporate training company. Um, Published a couple of books recently. Those were ebooks, but we're about to publish an actual book. I'm just started my own podcast. We have a speaker connect service at my company. It's called Alpstra. So we do corporate training, public speaking. We have executive and leadership coaches, quite a bit as everything in the leadership development space. I guess you would say that's kind of our specialty.
What got you into that field, that interest in leadership and personal development and professional development, I should say?
Well, so I started my career as a teacher. And what's interesting is back in 2004, I went to a women's conference in May of 2004. So that was like exactly 21 years ago. And when I walked in, I felt like God was telling me, Amy, you're going to be doing this one day. And at the time, I couldn't see how that was possible. I was a teacher then, and it just, looking back now, it's crystal clear the path that I took to get from there to where I am now. But I was a teacher, and at some point, I transitioned to corporate America. I was in charge of training and development for a software company, and I did that for a while. That background between working for a software company plus having a background in education was like a perfect match for the next step in my career, which was I went to work for McGraw Hill Education on their higher education side. And I was in sales and implementation, was promoted into leadership management positions, worked with sales teams, helped create their implementation program that they have there. And at that time, while I was working for McGraw Hill, I had one of those things that happen in life that you don't ever foresee coming and that you would never wish on anyone. And that was my husband took his life, and he did it right in front of me. And that, in and of itself, was a tragic experience. And that's an entirely different conversation for a different time. But it woke me up. It woke me up to the fact that there's more to life than just drudging through and not living with intention. And so before I had gone to work for McGraw Hill and I worked for that software company, I worked in an environment that was not a positive, inspiring, productive environment. Some might say it was toxic. Um, but at McGraw Hill, it was just the opposite. It was a very inspiring and motivating and encouraging, life giving type of group that I worked with. In fact, all the groups I worked with were that way at that organization. And so I got really curious about the difference between the difference that a leader can make in the culture of a company, their traits, how they handle their team members, and how everyone on the team works differently depending on who the leader is of the team. And so because I worked for McGraw Hill, I had access to their entire book bag, is what we called it, even though it was transitioning to more technology based materials at the time. But I had access to all of their textbooks. And so I read every single textbook that they published on psychology. I read everything I could on human behavior and neurology, leadership, management, business development. And I also had access to some of the top subject matter experts in the world because I was visiting colleges and universities so I could go talk to these professors and these people who wrote these books. And I would ask them questions and I would pick their brain, and I got really curious. And at the same time, podcasts were starting to become a thing. So I was listening to podcasts. I was listening to a lot of videos on YouTube. I was still reading books other than textbooks. I was still reading leadership books. And I just really consumed that was my entertainment. I don't watch much TV even to this day. Don't listen to the radio, but I consume things that I believe are enriching, that enrich who I am. And all of that information that I learned kind of helped me be able to do what I do today. But when that event happened that I told you about a few moments ago, when that happened, it was kind of a catalyst, a fork in the road, if you will, where I'd already been doing some public speeches, some talks for the companies that I worked for, but I started being asked to come speak more for motivational events. Some of the colleges, the deans or the provosts or the chancellors would ask me to come speak to their professors or their students. And so I would do that. And then some other organizations did. Long story short, it came to a point to where I had to make a decision. Am I going to continue working for corporate America, or am I going to step out on my own and take a chance and do this? Um, and it was a tough decision. It was a moment of bravery, and there was a lot of preparation that went into that, a lot of soul searching, a lot of praying, a lot of research. I took some training classes and things like that. But now that we're here, it's absolutely been the best move ever. And like I said a few moments ago, I can see from where I'm standing right now how every one of those things I just told you about led me to where I am right now.
Amy, I appreciate you sharing your story. And I think it's one of those things you mentioned multiple times, that curiosity, that wanting to learn a little bit more, whether it's more about the textbooks or the info in the textbooks, or having the
Mhm.
opportunity to talk to the professors and those who wrote the textbooks. It's one of those things where I think sometimes, maybe I'm not sure, and maybe I'll ask you this. How did you get into education to begin with? How did that path start?
Well, that's kind of fun. Um, right out of high school, I went to college. A lot of people do. But I left college and I moved up to Nashville, Tennessee for a while. and ended up getting married, having kids. My husband was in the military. And when he got out of the military, we moved back home. My home state is Louisiana. So we moved back to Louisiana. And I was finishing up my degree, and a friend of mine who was a teacher was talking to me about what a great work schedule it was for being a mommy. You get to come home when your kids get home from school, even though mine weren't quite in school yet. You get to come home when your kids are home from school. You have the summers off with them. And that sounded really good to me because my kids were very important to me and I wanted to give them a good life. So that's literally the reason that I went into education. But there is a backstory to that as well. When I was a little girl, like 7 years old, eight, nine, however old, little boys might be playing cops and robbers, at least my brother and my cousins did, or playing basketball or whatever they played. I played school. I was the teacher. And so my friends might be sitting in a semicircle in my bedroom and I was writing on the board teaching them. And if my friends weren't over, I would get my stuffed animals and I would line them up and I would teach them. So even though the conversation I had with my friend kind of helped me go in that direction, literally I've been teaching since I was a young kid. So when you look back at that, it's like, okay, it's obvious this is what I was made to do.
It goes back to what you mentioned earlier. Looking back, it makes perfect sense. But at the time, you're just a kid having fun, and you don't really realize those next dominoes that fall to move you onto your next opportunity.
And you know what else is funny? When I was in college, I had to take a public speaking class. I think a lot of people do. A lot of majors have people take those classes. And I had the one and only panic attack or anxiety attack of my entire life right before having to give my final speech in that class. And I kind of laugh at that today because I was so scared about getting up there and talking in front of my peers, but that's what I do for a living now.
It's so funny you mentioned that, Amy, because I tell people I was fortunate to be in education as well. And once you go in front of a group of students or classes of students, talking and speaking gets a lot easier, I've realized.
It does. And I think, a lot of people are nervous if they're not confident in the information that they're talking about. But if you're the expert in the room and you know what you're speaking about, it's really not that hard. There are strategies, there are techniques that you can learn to refine your performance or whatever. But as far as the information that you convey, as long as you know what you're talking about, heck, I have a 4 year old granddaughter, Jeremy, and she has seen some of my videos and she asked me to teach her what I do. And I literally told her two things. I said, number one, you have to know what you're talking about. And number two, you have to be interesting. So you're going to vary your speech. You might speak louder sometimes. You might get quiet. You might talk fast and then you might slow down. Those are the only things, I was speaking to a 4 year old. So I was giving her those pearls of wisdom. And so she asked me to record her speaking. So we have a stage, makeshift stage here at my house, and I was recording her, and she belted out. She went, "Your grandparents, they love you." And she just went into this whole spiel about how much grandparents love you. And it was the cutest thing ever. But those two little things I told her, she knew, she talked about a subject she knew about. She feels loved by her grandparents, and then she varied her rate and tone of speech, and it was fantastic.
Amy, I appreciate that so much. I think it's so important. I tell my podcast clients all the time, so much of it is being the expert, or let's say you're not the expert, you're on your way to become the expert. I tell people only talk about what you know about, and if you don't know, that's okay. I'm not familiar with that. Maybe we can look it up later. We can talk about that, or hey, let's pull it up on the screen. I think so
Yeah.
much of that is just being comfortable who you are, excuse me, your area of expertise.
And I also think that sometimes people are afraid of what people are going to think about them or that they're critiquing them or judging them. But the fact of the matter is, I have found most people are rooting for you. Most people want you to do well. And that's a mindset shift that people can take too, when knowing that the audience isn't out there critiquing everything you say. And so, what if a few of them are? Most of them aren't. The majority of them want to see you succeed.
I couldn't agree more. I think overall people do want to see you succeed, and I've realized that, of course, with friends and family, the close ones usually cheer you on, not always. But even those friends that maybe are on the sidelines, maybe they're silent. It kind of gives you, at least it gives me a little bit of that kind of hope that I know they're kind of hoping for me. They might not say it all the time. We might not talk all the time. But when we do get a chance to talk, a lot of times it comes up, hey, you're really doing something cool. Or I can't imagine that. Remember back when we did this? And it's just one of those things. I think it's nice to have that sometimes that silent approval, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've experienced some of those same conversations. I do think that it's important to note too, a lot of times the people who have known you the longest, who've known you your entire lives, it's hard for them to see you in that way. And so some of the people who we would like to think that they would support what we do in our endeavors, sometimes they don't, you know. It's great when they do, especially, you know, if they're loud supporters or if they're silent supporters. But you have to realize that not everybody is going to, and they might have their own reasons for not supporting you. Maybe they didn't go after their own goals and dreams, but you can't let that stop you either.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. On everyone's journey, you make a decision, not really knowing the outcome. Can you give me a time that you did that?
Starting a business. Yeah, that was one of the scariest steps I've taken in my life, because you have this safety net working for corporate America, or at least we think we have a safety net, but we have the salary, we have the benefits, we have the insurance. Um, we don't have the stress of making sure payroll's met unless that's our area of responsibility. I didn't. But stepping out into the unknown and just having faith that this was the right thing, that I was doing the right thing. Um, that's the epitome of an example of something that I did and didn't know what the outcome would be. I mean, it's still today. I might not, you know, next week or next month or next year, it might all crumble. You know, we're into this about 4 or 5 years now, so things are going well, and there's momentum and there's growth, but you never know what's going to happen. And the way I look at it was, back in my younger days when I was a young mother, uh, we were dirt poor, you know, and if I get back to that place again, I'm okay. I've been there before. I know what it's like. I was still happy. Life was still good. It's just I was in a different financial situation.
I mean, I appreciate that. I think it's so much, and those who have not started a business, it is very terrifying. Even though you cross your T's, you dot your I's, you're setting up your plans, you're all ready to go, and then the first couple days or the first couple months or years even, you're just like, oh, something's gonna fail, and then you're like, oh wait, I'm pretty good at this. This is continuing, but I think it's one of those things that I don't know if I always talk about it, but it's definitely in the back of your mind sometimes.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's something that stays with you every day, even when you're not consciously thinking of it. Especially being probably a small business owner, maybe people who have larger companies, they don't have the same concerns that maybe you or I have. But being a small business owner, it's even if it's not something that's in the immediate forefront, it's always in the background, and it, you know, some of that is good because it keeps you hungry and it keeps you honest and it keeps you working, moving forward and progressing, right?
I think it's that healthy dose of, a little concern of the unknown, but also for me, a lot of it's excitement. I'm excited each day to see, what's next.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of times where I will work till the wee hours of the morning, and I'll do that often. And then all of a sudden one day I have to just take a break and let my body rest and recover. But that's one of the perks of being a small business owner too, is that you can do that. It might be a Wednesday, and that day I wake up and my body's needs is telling me, "Hey, I need rest today." And as long as I don't have any meetings or anything like that, then I'm free to do that.
Couldn't agree more. Title of the podcast: Into the Unknown. What do you have working on? What's your business doing right now?
Well, we just launched our own podcast. We recorded the very first episode recently this week, I believe. Yeah, this week. And we aren't publishing them right away. We have 2 being recorded next week, 2 the following week. And then once we have enough built up, we'll start releasing them. But those are going to be released soon. So I'm excited about that. It's called The Shift. I did mention that I was finishing up another book. So those are some exciting things, and just little growth opportunities, starting to talk in some areas and on some topics and to some audiences that I haven't in the past. That's good. We also have, like I mentioned, the Speaker Connect, and the Speaker Connect is really neat, I think, because it's a little different from, say, a speakers bureau, where a speakers bureau, they have speakers come in and they take a large percentage, sometimes 30% or more of the speaker fee to connect speakers with events. But what we do is we don't charge that exorbitant fee. We just charge like a setup fee and then an annual renewal. And it gives people who, now this is for specific speakers, it's not for well-known or established one. It's for people who either do it on the side like I did in the beginning, or people who are new at it. So it gives them a web presence, it gives them a social media presence. We have mastermind groups where we meet a couple times a month and talk about things and give each other ideas and bounce things off. There's all these little perks that come with it, other than just being a speaker bureau. And then for the event coordinators, the benefit is it's more affordable speakers. So not all organizations, not all companies can pay $15,000 or $20,000 to have someone speak at a keynote event, which there are some speakers who make a lot more than that. But let's just say some of the higher priced people are making 15, 20 per keynote. Not all event coordinators, not all organizations can afford that. So we have a place where people who don't have that budget can find high quality speakers as well.
Where can people learn more about those?
That's on our website. Our company's name's Alpstra, so it's www.alpstra.com, alpstra.com, and it's under the speakers tab, Speaker Connect.
Well, Amy, I want to say thank you again for taking the time to talk with me today. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate you having me.
We'll talk soon.
All right. Bye.
That was another fun episode of Into the Unknown. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen. And if it provides you any value or entertainment, I would love if you shared it with others, liked, subscribed, and really just help the podcast grow. Again, tell a friend, tell a foe, just anyone who might enjoy hearing some stories of people's own journeys and what got them to where they are today. Till next time.